Hello, everybody. Welcome to World Edition. I'm Nick Palavita, and we're running live from the Raleigh-Durham area without Steve Rao and without, Mark Lee. Well, we will not be introducing the news until they come in later on, but we'll be introducing our guest in the United States and around the world to discuss the hot topics of the world. First of all, we'll bring in Rick Rosner from the Los Angeles area to discuss it. Shaquille is backstage, so we're going to just keep him backstage for a while. This way you'll be able to get a word in edgewise. So let's take a look at some of the hot topics that are going on right now. And it looks like our hot topic is Republican National Convention. What are your thoughts, Rick, on the RNC convention?
The craziest moment last night, maybe. I didn't watch the whole thing, but J.D. Vance was giving his acceptance speech and talking about his family. And he talked about his grandma, Mama, who, as a frail old lady, when they cleaned out her house, they found out that she had 19 loaded handguns stashed in various places in the house. And he said that was great because she was, a little bit unsteady on her feet. She couldn't move very fast. So she made sure to always have, a gun within a few steps. Everybody went crazy, 19 guns. It was,
they were happy about it. Is that what this was?
There were huge cheers for that. I don't know. Maybe you get your grandma a gun belt so she.
You know what they should do is they say that the United States murder rate by gun is 6 times to 10 times larger than Spain and Morocco, and then go yay. Okay.
Yeah.
But
to give you the numbers, the New York, the American homicide rate, 4.96 per 100,000 per year. One person in 20,000 in America gets killed every year, murdered. And Spain, it's 0.62. One person in 160,000 gets murdered.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. What they should do is just change the how they're saying it and say, well, the United States, it has the largest murder by gun in the Western world advanced countries. Yay.
Yeah.
It just shows the vast ignorance of the Republican Party, which is one reason I turned in my ticket in the year 2000. I was going like, guys, I can't support stupidity. I'm sorry.
I was briefly a Republican in the 80s, but just because my girlfriend was a big time involved in Republican politics. So I was like,
well, I started as a Democrat, then I went to Republican, then went to Democrat, and I'm independent because the parties do not serve the people. I mean, they're just, they serve themselves. Absolutely. Okay. So it looks like we have the Republicans uniting. So they're all that. But the real problem I have is the United States needs better leaders. I mean,
on the Democratic side, Biden has COVID.
Yeah.
So he canceled, some stuff. The people I follow on Twitter were annoyed that he was, even though he has COVID, was running around without a mask, which puts other people at risk.
Yeah, well, that's true. I didn't know that. But see, the problem with Joe, see, this is the leadership on the other side, is that he's old. I mean, he's just not going to be able to beat Father Time. So why are we sitting and defending Joe, and why didn't they? I mean, can't they see this coming, that they need to have a bench? Any good sport, you bring your bench in. Where's their bench? They don't have a bench. They don't have a development league. Even the NBA has a D League, they call it. It's a development league. So that
I watched the D League game yesterday with Bronny James, LeBron.
Yeah, Bronny James playing on the D League, right? And the whole idea is that you want to have the next man up in the case the first man falters. And they don't have it. So, I mean, the thing is, the next person up is actually Kamala Harris. That's the reason I'm for Kamala Harris, because that was your choice. Whether it was a good choice or a bad choice, doesn't matter. That is your choice, and so you got to live with your choice, and you have to give her a chance to compete. And Joe needs to step aside and give Kamala a chance to, throw the football, throw the baseball, shoot the basket, do something. But Joe's not going to do anything. It's just really sad. And the word I was looking for the other day, it was on the wrong thing, is anosognosia, which is a great word that Dr. Patmos yesterday on the Medicine Show is trying to pull out of the air. It's a person that has a mental lapse or disease, and the person can't recognize it. In other words, it's common among schizophrenics. Okay, schizophrenics and people that suffer from mental illness also suffer from anosognosia, which means that they can never recognize that the problem is with them. And it's a tough one to combat because, you say, well, you have some really problems because you have some delusional thoughts. No, I'm not. I'm fine. Everything's wonderful.
So Biden has recently in interviews said he's open to withdrawing if his doctors tell him he has medical reasons to do so.
Yeah, well, the real question is what is the extent of his decline? There's obviously a decline, and what's the extent? I mean, is it early onset dementia? We don't know that.
No, because if you listen, he's still got the ideas in his head.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the problem with both candidates, Trump and Biden, is like Biden's had a stutter his whole life. He's had a tendency to make verbal gaffes.
That's correct.
His whole life.
Yep.
Trump has had a tendency to be a blowhard his whole life, that he doesn't particularly worry about facts. So with both of them, it's hard to tell what's just them being them or what is some clinical condition. And each side accuses the other side of having a candidate in decline. Obviously, in Biden's case, that accusation is stickier.
Right. Well, the problem also I have with the campaigns, plural, is it's not a problem and solution campaign. In other words, we have a problem, let's say immigration, here's our solution. We have a problem, Social Security going broke, here's our solution. We have a problem, which is really the middle class and the poor class is losing, whether Shaquille, who's back there, likes it or not, relative to the 1%. 1% is kicking bloody tail, Speaking
I got mad on Twitter yesterday.
Is the defender of the 1%. Okay, the 1%, whether Shaquille likes it or not, they're kicking tail financially. The people who are my clients, they're doing really, really well. I'm grateful because I do well off of them.
You said a thing yesterday that is, I got pissed at the Democrats yesterday, where for 8 years the Republicans have had a short, punchy slogan, MAGA. There's nothing similar from the Democrats.
But MAGA doesn't provide any solutions. See, this is what I'm saying.
Well, that's wrong.
You're going to make America great again. Okay, show me how you're going to solve the Social Security and Medicare problem going broke in the next decade or two. Show me.
So, you guys are missing.
Come on, Dr. Dan, defend it.
I don't care. You know my feelings about Trump and Biden, right? But the Republicans do have a plan. Again, it's going back to energy independence, right? Reducing the corporate tax, and employing more people at better wages, getting inflation under control, getting rid of many of the illegal immigrants that were permitted to come in the country illegally by the Biden administration, keeping the ones that are productive and capable of actually contributing to our society and can pass the security checks and that kind of thing. I think Trump has a reasonable position on abortion that won't offend, all but the most stringent feminists. Because I think it's reasonable. It's going to be going back more to a Roe standard, I think. Whether I agree or not that should be the case from the standpoint of the law, that's probably going to be the situation. I think that fewer and fewer people, except the diehard Democrats, are really fearing Trump versus another 4 years of senselessness, right? So I think, yes, MAGA, make America great again. I mean, the things that Trump is always for are very, very clear. and achievable. You mentioned Social Security. I don't know what they're going to do about Social Security. I think something needs to be done about Social Security. I think the solution is, taxing more on a higher level with people that make more money. It makes sense. Why in the hell they get a pass? They should be paying more, right? They get the benefit of it. When they retire, they get a larger Social Security benefit. So why not, right? So that's part of it. Maybe they have to increase the retirement age a little. I don't know. But the point is that Social Security is struggling. Medicare is struggling. Now, putting a bunch of illegal immigrants on Medicare did not help solve the problem. Putting a lot of illegal immigrants on the dole of the federal government exacerbated the problem. Giving handouts and entitlements to people who are not citizens of the United States actually inflames inflationary forces, forces housing into greater crisis, and creates further problems. So, Biden has no solutions. He's just an old man that's washed up and wants to continue to maintain power when his day is done. Now, Democrats need a better person to represent him. Kamala Harris clearly is not that person, but that's likely who they're stuck with. Trump will do his 4 years, and then we'll see who emerges. I mean, it's just, I think it's that clean cut. So when you say Trump has no solutions, Trump actually does, and they were very effective in the first 4 years of his presidency. He got a lot of stuff done despite being lynched on every corner by the Democrats in these fake impeachments and everything else. So, yeah, you can blow hard about Trump and how he lies all the time and everything else. Biden lies just as much. So it's just, these are politicians. What do you expect, right?
I just want to rebut one point. Energy independence. For the past 3 years, America has drilled more oil and produced more fossil fuel than we've set records 2022, 2023, 2024. If you want energy independence, Biden has delivered on that. He's broken his campaign promises to limit.
Oh, yeah, but that was a midterm correction on his part. He didn't intend to do that. He could see that it was a mistake to have done what he did.
So he corrected. You want to correct?
Well, but it's not. We're not back to reasonable gas prices, are we? We're still seeing people suffer at the pump. California is over $5 a gallon. Do you know that?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I live in California. Well, no, actually, it's under. The last time I bought gas, it was under. But yeah, Californians have been screwed for years because the refiners say, "Oh, we've got to." They screw us for years. Plus,
no,
we
it's
do have to pay
more
tax
you pay in California.
Yeah, but we have cleaner air than we did in the 70s. We had the worst
that's
air.
Not saying much.
But I like not dying of respiratory diseases, and I'm willing to pay an extra $1 a gallon for cleaner air.
Well, and outrageous taxes and all the liberal policies of that idiot who runs the state. I mean, yeah.
I'm a California taxpayer, and when you hear about horrible taxes, I find to not be true. I've had a bunch of years where I made good money and have never paid anywhere close to the 10% that the rich are supposed to pay to California in taxes. It's most years it's like 2 or 3%, which I'm fine with.
Thank goodness for your accountant.
Well, my accountant was me for a lot of years.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, this also goes to the point that we're really not that far apart, as people said, that both parties do agree of energy independence is a priority. Now, when we're looking at, and this is what I hate about the plan, Republicans plan to do inflation control. Great. How is my question. In other words, the devil's in the details. The debates are not debates. They're, they're like beauty contests. I mean, really, no one talks about the meat and potatoes. Okay, so I assume both parties agree they want inflation under control. The devil's in the details. How are they going to get inflation?
You got to grow the piece of pie. You got to grow the economy. You've got to reduce these. Okay, it's like Burnham said, right, in his piece. Under Trump, it was like a breath of fresh air. We could expand businesses, pro-growth, that kind of thing, and it was true all over the country. We saw businesses beginning to thrive, and that kind of thing. Biden comes back in, reverses everything, increases the regulation. Wants to increase the taxes, everything. It's a stranglehold on business. Business is the machine that runs our country. Now, I'm not pro big corporations. I think they're an anathema to the American dream and to free enterprise, right? But small businesses and the vitality of our country and employing people and training them in skills, that is what I think his agenda is about. Increase the base. You increase the base of productivity, the GNP, and that kind of thing. That helps straighten out a lot of things. Get rid of all the restrictions, supply and demand, and all the things that have been restricted so much because of Biden's policies. I mean, I think it's just very simple. There's a 180-degree difference between Biden and Trump and how they view the economy and how they view governance. Now, the other thing Trump will get us out of is the Ukraine crap, and get Iran back in its place, and get us out of these damn world wars. He'll take us off the brink of this potential nuclear war that Biden's got us into, just because he's got strength. Biden is weak.
I mean, but Biden's the one who got 150 billion in arms to Ukraine. I mean,
and that was a bad thing.
Well, frickin' Biden is not the one who started the Ukraine war. It's all on Putin. And Putin.
Well, no, it was on Putin, but they had a chance to resolve that early in, and they were at the table. They were ready to sign, and then Biden nixed it.
I don't know, but I have a question for Shaq. So yesterday I bought Bitcoin for the first time because Mark Cuban tweeted that Bitcoin, why are Silicon Valley billionaires supporting Trump? And Cuban tweeted, it's a Bitcoin play, because if Trump gets back in, he imposes all these tariffs. Tariffs are wildly inflationary, and in an inflationary environment, you want to own Bitcoin. But Shaq's gone.
He refuses to answer the question on the ground that may incriminate his financial positions in world currencies currently.
And I immediately lost like 2% of my stake.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it was a great investment. You invest in Bitcoin, the money goes to the Bitcoin producer.
Yeah, going to answer. I
get nothing. I would love to be on the other side of that trade. Issuing Bitcoins. You send me the money, I'll give you these little worthless little gems.
Yes,
hey, Dan, I even thought about it. I thought a great business. You send me your hard-earned cash. I'll take euros. I'll take rupees. I'll take dollars.
And listen, I've been screwed enough in my lifetime. I'm not falling for that.
What?
Well,
you're not.
That rather sounds.
No, I want to be the guy who sells it, not the guy who buys it. I want to sell Bitcoin because there's two sides to every transaction, and there's the person who wins and the person who loses. Okay, in a financial transaction like that, I want to be on the winning side. I know Shaq likes to be on the gambling side, but I like to be the house, the guy who collects the money, and then they take their little commission and then they spread it among everybody else. Let them figure out who wins. So I do like the position of the house more so than the other position. So no, I'm not going to do Bitcoin. I don't know about Shaq. He might be loaded with Bitcoin as far as I know. Waiting to escape Australia. Yeah, Shaq.
So I have never actually gone into digital currencies. It's something that I probably will do over the next few weeks, just have a bit of a play around, because I feel like I should get some experience with it, and also because I saw how far I've been left behind in relation to AI and ChatGPT and writing code and all that sort of stuff. So it's something I'm certainly going to explore. I'm just going to address a few things. One, to Nick's comments about being on the other side of that trade, that sounds like people who give up their labour in return for currency issued by central banks all over the world, right? Same kind of thing, backed by nothing but the full faith and credit of the government that issues the
Fiat
currency.
money, baby, fiat money.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the other thing, Nick, is I don't know why you keep ganging up on the 1%. By definition, they're a minority, the 1%. Leave us alone. Come on now.
Well, you are one of them, right, buddy? Yeah, it's like punching you in the face, right?
I know, leave me alone. I worked hard.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get here.
Wait. Aren't you one of those 1%ers, Shaq? Admit or deny?
Yeah, I'm
You will
a
neither
1%.
admit nor deny. Okay, you take the fifth. That's fine. I appreciate it.
But no, but I'm not. I'm not
He
a.
really
I'm
thinks
not a
I am.
I'm not a point. I'm not a 0.1%, and that's the big difference. I think a lot of people don't realize how low the threshold is to be the top 1%. But I'm going to address a couple of things. So, Rick, you make a comment about Biden always stumbling and stuttering, etc. Yeah, that's true. But let's be honest, if you go back 4 years, if you go back 10 years when he was the VP, and then if you go back 20 and 30 years, it's very clear that he's not the same person. It's very clear that he can't articulate the way that he used to be able to. So that's what I think people are responding to. And I think there's a lot of people, Nick announced earlier that he was an independent. If anybody is completely independent when it comes to talking about American politics, I think it's me, given that I'm not American. And given that your political issues, if you ask me for my opinion on them, as far as your domestic policies are concerned, I can give you my opinion insofar as what we're doing in countries that I'm a citizen of, etc. But it really doesn't make much of a difference to me because I don't live there for most of it. So from my perspective, actually, Joe Biden's policies are really good for me. They're really, really good for me because he's going on a rampage of spending government money, and that government money tends to flow into corporations that I have the ability to invest into. So Donald Trump's support of small businesses is not in my interests. The Labor Party in Australia, who I've never voted for in my life, that doesn't mean I've always voted for the Liberals, which is the Australian Republicans, essentially. It doesn't mean I've always voted for them. I've often voted for minor parties, but I've never voted for the Labor Party. But actually, because of the massive influx of immigration into this country, it would be in my interest to vote for the Labor Party because those immigrants have created a critical housing shortage in this country. As somebody who owns property, that's fantastic for me. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to advocate for that because I don't think it's in the best interest of the countries that I love. Now, the one thing that Donald Trump did, from my perspective, maybe different to yours, that I thought was very positive was reducing the tax rate from 39.6% to 20% or 21%. The reason why that was important and the reason why I could never oppose that is because that's exactly what I'm telling Australia and New Zealand to do. Our tax rates on corporations are approximately 30%, but our peer group in Asia, our peer group in Europe, all sit around that 20% mark or lower. Yeah. So when you have a high rate of corporate tax, it doesn't make sense. The last thing I'll just quickly say, if I had to choose a place to live in the United States, forgetting about all the social issues and only talking about personal income tax or what my personal tax burden would be, the number one place that I would choose would be California. Because your tax rules are so complicated and so complex and so misguided, in my opinion, that it would be in my interests not to actually structure my assets and income around the world, but to declare it through California. Because my tax rate would not only be zero, but in some cases, California would end up owing me money. Now, again, I don't live in California, but if I'm saying that to you, I'm not saying that because I'm some sort of like mental case, although sometimes I am. I'm saying that because I think that's ridiculous. And I think if Californians actually saw how much the international community abuses the Californian tax code, they would be horrified. So, again, I'm happy for you guys to keep doing it. Works for me.
Well, let's talk about living in California, where California is nice. There's a reason that, people live here. It's nice most of the time. What isn't nice is that, the property tax system is screwed. It's been screwed since the 70s, and that means the schools are poor. It doesn't matter to me anymore because my kid is beyond school age, and the roads are crappy. And so, everything's nice except that a certain amount of damage is done to my car suspension from all the potholes. But
well, to be fair, the roads are pretty nice in Beverly Hills, in Orange County, in Newport Beach. The roads are pretty nice where I hang out in California. But no, look, your point is well taken. And here's the thing. Because there's so much attention paid to income taxes, we all know that the very wealthy generally don't earn a very high income. So whether you increase payroll taxes on them or you just increase the marginal rates of tax, it doesn't work because they don't earn anything in the first place. And I'm a very classic example of this. Not actually because I intended to be like this, but why would I sell an asset if I can do a constructive short sale and borrow the money? I'm not having to pay tax, but I'm actually getting a tax deduction on the interest that I'm paying, which is minimal at best. It doesn't make sense. I would be happy to contribute more. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that I would actually be happy to contribute more. If I didn't want to pay any taxes at all, I would go and live in Monaco, right? But the reason I continue to live in places like Switzerland, which is a lot more expensive than Monaco is simply because it provides me with opportunities and a quality of life that I want. The last thing I just want to quickly say, Rick, I've got family that live in Canada, and they say a very similar thing to what you've said. I don't mind paying a couple of % here and there of my income in order to have cleaner water and cleaner environment, cleaner air. That's fine if that is the cost of actually getting the cleaner water and the cleaner air. I don't think it is. And I think that you can prove that it's not because there are certainly other parts of the United States and other parts of the world that don't have those higher tax burdens that also have clean air and water and etc.
So
New Zealand.
I can be specific. California, we pay about $2 more per gallon on gas. $1 is well spent for cleaner air. The other buck is the oil companies screwing us, and it's been this way for decades. They create false shortages by shutting down refineries and say, "Oops, we had a problem and we can't make." And so I'm happy with the 1% that helps the air. The other buck is like F you refineries.
But Rick, they say that they're using that money to make cleaner air.
But you look at the air.
There are plenty of other parts of the world that have cleaner air as well without that dollar surcharge. And just for the record, because I live in Australia, well, I'll rephrase that, because I'm temporarily staying in Australia, I can tell you right now that if we only had to pay $5 or $6 a gallon for petrol, we would be ecstatic. So, and my other country, the United Kingdom, would be even more ecstatic. So I always love Americans complaining about the gas prices.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, Jack. It's almost a joke that other countries have been paying, twice, sometimes 3 times more than we have. But one of the things that bothers me is you can go cap rent, you can cap utilities, regulate utilities, but the main resource for all utilities, the main utility for our life, gas, that gets us to and from work, you don't regulate and you don't cap. And I have a problem with that because that is what caused this problem. This problem that we're living in right now with the prices going up and everything, all of this started because the executives wanted a bigger paycheck and they raised the gas prices. Now, if you had regulated them, then you wouldn't have a problem. The other problem I have is these really wealthy people who are angry at Biden for adding a cap to rent. And, they're going around going, it's just going to hurt you because I can go up 5% every year now. And after 4 or 5 years, I'll have billions of dollars in my pocket. You're helping me. And I'm like, okay, so dummy, how much? And he did the math. I said, how much did you raise the rent these last 3 years? Was it 5% or 40%? Because I noticed my son's rent went up about 50%. So yeah, okay, so we go 50% every year for the next 4 or 5 years. How much is it going to be? So I think this gaslighting, lying, misleading people needs to stop. I think the truth needs to be done. Math needs to be done. But the biggest problem I saw with decision making was when Trump failed to hire a pandemic team when we got hit with the pandemic. He's had a pandemic team. He fired them. Obama put him in place after the Ebola hit Nigeria, and a good pandemic strategy proved to stop it and end the fatality rates. And Obama put it into place in 2016, 2018, Trump removed it. I will tell you this, if Trump had hired them back and maintained, and even if they failed, if he had hired them back, shown good decision making, I probably would have voted for him the next term. But what that showed me was he did not care about the people enough to even hire back a pandemic team. And that's the reason poor decision making ruined our country. It killed millions of people, unnecessarily killed millions of people. And it killed even more people than that because the people couldn't get the medical care they needed. But a good pandemic team would have lowered the anxiety level we were going through. We would have had a strategy, and our country would not. I think Trump would have been back in office, and we wouldn't be having these conversations.
Can I say a couple of things there? So, firstly, on rental increase caps. I'm not going to make the argument that, hey, it's good for you if we don't have the caps. If I'm a property owner, I'm not going to make that argument. I will just say I don't own property in the United States, but interest rates in Australia have gone up, inflation's gone up similarly to what you've experienced in the US. That has put upward pressure on rental prices. And like when one of our tenants moved out because they were actually moving to another state, we were offered $150 a week more than what we'd actually advertised the house for. So what are we going to do? Of course, we're going to take it, right? So that I think, I look at young people today and I think I feel really sorry for them because I know how hard it was when I was in my 20s, and my heart breaks for them because I don't see this getting any easier. To COVID, the reason I stopped short of criticizing Donald Trump too much. Look, I don't live in the United States. I was there at the beginning of the pandemic, and what I came to in Australia was a very fragmented response. And I have most of my family outside of Australia live in New Zealand, and there was a lot of issues in New Zealand the way it was handled. I think that world leaders and I think that medical teams around the world were giving oftentimes conflicting advice. And my concern, just as a person, was that it was very hard to have any kind of conversation because it felt like as soon as you made a comment, big tech would say something. And for example, right here on Pod TV or on IBN TV, the predecessor, I made a comment that, hey, look, the CDC is saying something that's completely different to the health authorities in Australia. What are we supposed to do if we're Australians that want to go to the United States? We got taken off the air for that comment. And it wasn't really a comment, it was a question. So I think, yes, Trump probably could have done things differently and probably could have done things better. I think I could probably say that about all leaders, including the ones that I don't agree with. I wasn't a fan of the way Jacinda Ardern responded. I wasn't a fan of some of the premiers here in Australia and the way they responded, but I have stopped short of criticising them for their pandemic response simply because I know that everybody was being given all sorts of conflicting information. Now, I would agree with you that if Donald Trump fired a pandemic team, that he should have actually hired a new one to replace them when there was actually a pandemic. I will agree with that. But what effect that would have, I don't have any way of measuring that.
Well, we don't. But we do know that they had strategies in place to control, maintain, how to deal with fast spreading fatal type diseases. COVID is going around again. It's not a panic right now. It is more of okay, this is what we do. You go home, you rest through it, and then when you get better, you get back to work. They don't even tell you how many days you should stay away from people. At least that's not what I've heard from the people who have been tested. They are told to go home, stay home for a few days. But anytime you have a cold or anything, you don't need to get around people and spread it. You need to go home, stay home, until you're better and not contagious. That's it. Very easy, simple. But I think Trump would have done a better job. To me, a good decision maker would have hired back a pandemic team. He promised he would. If we ever have a pandemic, I will hire them back. And that is documented. All of that is documented.
With the corporate tax rate, we've seen, so having it at 21% means that we're going to be running deficits, but you can't raise. I agree with Shaq that if your tax rate in your country is higher than the corporate tax rate in other countries, we've seen what American corporations will do. They'll make themselves international corporations, and they will move operations or wherever they pay taxes from to other countries. So you have to remain competitive in the corporate tax rate. But then you have to figure out how you're going to operate at a tax deficit, because we used to get, I believe, in the 50s and 60s, half of our tax income came from corporate taxes. Now it's like what, 1/5 of federal tax income?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
they
if you look at what's going on,
I mean,
that,
if anyone's ever done taxes, they know how they're so complicated anyway.
well, I mean,
I think
I
a flat
agree with
tax
Shaq.
would be better, because then nobody could use deductions to reduce their taxable income. And then, because when you say, oh, we're going to add a tax to the wealthy, it doesn't faze them. It doesn't.
But the reason why it doesn't, as I've said on previous shows, is that I would move to America tomorrow if America said, we are going to get rid of all taxes except for income tax, and we're going to charge you 500% income tax. I would move there tomorrow, because all I'm going to do is not earn anything. I don't earn anything anyway, right? So, this is the issue. It's like, I think when people try to talk about taxes, we have to really identify what is the most efficient way to raise government revenue. A lot of people say we've got to talk about spending. Of course, you've got to talk about spending. That's important. But if the question is how does government raise revenue, my preference is for a broad-based indirect style tax. I think that corporations need to pay something, so perhaps there should be withholdings on taxes that are going outside of the United States. So dividends being paid by corporations to foreign shareholders should have a withholding tax on it. There's a lot of things that can be discussed to try to help to keep the money there. And I think one of the issues that you get is things like the alternative minimum tax was brought about because of the idea that the very wealthy were dodging their taxes. But what got forgotten in that conversation is that there were places where the government wanted them to dodge their taxes. For example, municipal and state bonds that aren't taxed either federally or at a state level. So if you are somebody who's very wealthy, you can put tens of millions of dollars into those bonds. You can also use those bonds as security to borrow money at very, very low rate and invest it into other things. So of course they were using that because the government designed them for those people to use it. So again, I think there are ways to solve this issue, but I think that if it's just going to be a conversation where everybody reacts to, oh, you're trying to raise taxes on the rich don't like it or they don't care, or you're going to you're going to cut taxes and that's only going to benefit the rich. I think the problem with the United States is that your tax system is significantly more lopsided than most other countries. And one of the countries that the US often compares itself to, Californians especially, are places like in Scandinavia, like Sweden. But Sweden doesn't have as complicated a tax system as what you have in the US. So I think that those conversations need to happen. I'm not saying that I'm right about everything this, but those conversations need to happen, and an exchange of ideas needs to occur so that everybody has a system that they think is fair on everybody. The main point I will make is that I think that people in a similar economic and wealth position could be contributing similar amounts to each other.
Well, I think that a flat tax would just solve majority of the problems. We wouldn't need the IRS agents chasing people. It wouldn't be used against them. We wouldn't, we could get rid of the IRS agents. No more harassing. I mean, right now I've noticed that they're harassing people who have generated over $1 million in revenue, and they're going after them for another $250,000. And they've only selected a few people to do this. So I'm interested in seeing what the harassment is all about and why they've picked these people. But I do think that if we went that route, we could use those agents to process the undocumented aliens that are in these countries and get that process under control. So you're not firing people without giving them another job. They're very good at processing. But when you sit here and you provide people with so many deductions and don't do an easy form. Go file one of our taxes. Pretend like you're filing taxes with us, and don't do an easy form. Do one where you can get all of the deductions you think you deserve, and you'll be surprised. You will be surprised. Yes, Rick.
US taxes was the reason that I started to study taxes around the world. Because obviously, as a fairly young person, I didn't know what was going on. And when I had to first start filling out tax forms for the US, because of dividends, I started to look into what would actually happen if I lived in America. What does the US tax form actually look like? And I was horrified to find that it was 1,500 pages of tax law and 70,000 pages of explanations. I mean, that just sounds totally ridiculous.
Don't even understand. I've been in an audit.
Exactly.
They didn't even understand their own laws.
Exactly. And then as Nick says,
can you go read it before we talk about it?
and then as Nick says that the presumption is if you're being prosecuted that they're correct. But you can be very, very creative. And it was at that point that I started to realize what I believe is the problem, that because it is so complex, the everyday person is not going to employ the sorts of lawyers that are going to and tax accountants that are going to cost $1 million a year, because why would you? But I know a lot of people that would. I know people that spend $5 million. I know a lot of people as well that have become so resentful to taxes, not just in America, but in countries, that will say to me, I would rather pay $5 million to avoid $4.8 million in taxes, because it just makes me feel good the government's not getting any. That's not cool. That's not what they should be doing. It's a symptom of a broken system, in my opinion, and we need to fix it.
I'm going to bring this digital nomad on that has figured out the tax systems to his benefit. But yes, Rick.
I would take the example of
Nomad. He's fantastic. I very, very much like the man that you're referring to.
So take the example of Donald Trump, who in business is very smart and very dumb. From 1985 through 2015, Donald Trump lost more money than any other American. However, and some of that is from bad business decisions, opening up 3 casinos in Atlantic City, so he's competing with himself. But I would guess, and nobody's explained it to me, but I would guess that most of those losses are on paper, so he doesn't have to pay taxes, because there were a lot of years where Trump paid less than $1,000 in federal income tax. And he has learned how to use the system the way other rich people do and corporations to avoid most taxes.
Right.
Well, so on that, you also don't know what grants he got to go to Atlanta, etc. There's all sorts of different things. I think that one of the most reprehensible things that he did was that he left a lot of small contractors with the bill by just declaring bankruptcy. I think that was a terrible thing that he did. I really do have a moral problem with that. But just to come to the tax issue there, I don't think that he necessarily learned that system himself. I think that he's obviously talented in property development. I don't think he's particularly smart. That's just my personal view. I don't think he's academically gifted. I could be wrong. Certainly, I don't think that he has a great command of the financial system and the workings of banking and all that sort of stuff.
I think he's brilliant because he does file bankruptcy all the time. So,
I think
it's immoral. I do, but he figured it out. But read David Case Johnston's book.
If I can just finish
the book, you'll learn.
I've actually read all of David K. Johnston's books in relation to Trump and in relation to taxes. I just want to say very quickly, the one thing I'll just say is I don't think it was that Donald Trump learned the system. It's that when you get to a certain wealth level, you then, you get lawyers and accountants, and they end up telling you need to do this and you need to do that. I've been through that when I started to earn a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Then all of a sudden I started saying, look, I better pay someone because my situation is becoming more complicated. And there's 2 things. 1, I don't want to make a mistake. And 2, even if I'm confident that I know what I'm doing, it's in my interests, even if I'm an accountant, it's in my interest to pay somebody else to do it, because then I've actually got some recourse to say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. The accountant filled all this out, and there is some liability on their part, especially if I've also employed a tax lawyer.
Did you
And
read
that's
all of our tax forms? Because it says that you're still liable for.
yes, correct. Yes, correct. In the United States, yes, correct. However,
I would be very careful with that.
but I was also referring to my own countries. But I'll just say this caveat, Kim. If I have a tax lawyer in the United States and I have a top firm and I have declared everything that I need to declare, and they have done something wrong, which has then resulted in me facing a penalty, I have every right to sue them because they gave me inappropriate or ineffective advice. So that's what I'm saying, is that I have got some recourse.
They also will have you sign a document that you have walked through all of your taxes, you have read through everything, and that you agreed to everything that they put in there. So the mistake then falls back on you. But
so what I'll then do, Kimberly, is I'll interpose between myself and the accountant of corporation, so that if there is that attackability, I will have a director of that company. I'm not a director; it's not my problem. Well, what I'm getting at is
that's why you incorporate too. That way you protect your personal.
Yeah, but the directors are still responsible. What I'm getting at is, without going into intricacies of all these different structures, there's a lot of ways to be able to relieve yourself of the liability if something goes wrong. And I think that if you are at a certain wealth level, you get that kind of advice.
Yep.
And so it's not a reflection of how brilliant Trump is. It's a reflection of how great his lawyers and accountants are.
Well, I mean, anyone of any business size can benefit from being from corporate law. You just have to know how to go and use it. And if you're going to go into anything like that, I highly recommend reading some of David Cay Johnston's books, because they actually, even though I read them later in life, they actually helped me understand a lot of things that I thought were, it's just a good way to refresh things you thought you knew. But there is a lot. Yes, Rick.
So for the past 15 years or so, the IRS has been toothless because they've been understaffed. They've been broke. And so those were the years where I did my own taxes. And if I screwed something up, I just get a computer generated letter saying, explain this. Mm-hmm. But in the era before that, they had human auditors, and they were terrifying. Now, I don't know. Early in Biden's thing, they were supposed to hire 87,000 more IRS workers so they could go after rich tax avoiders, and so they could answer the phone and you could talk to a person. I don't know if those 87,000 folks actually got hired. I've tried to talk to the IRS by phone lately. It's just as bad, if not worse than it ever was.
It's worse. And I have found one advocate who, she takes about 3 to 6 months to get back to people unless it's a very urgent matter. But no, it's worse. And I will tell you how stupid it is. They owed me a significant amount of money after we settled everything. And I kept waiting for the check and waiting for the check. And a year goes by and they send me a collection letter. They send me a letter saying, you owe us money. You owe us money now. So then I call them and I can't get anybody on the phone. So I get these harassing letters. And then because I'm on that list, I get these phone calls from people that say, we'll help you, da, da, da. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you called. Can you get them to pay me because they owe me? And they hang up on me. They don't want to deal with that. So, and then when I finally do get a hold of someone, they go, oh, okay, we're going to fix that. We finally got things settled. It took 2 years. I received probably 15 letters of them trying to collect from me. And I thought things were calm. And I just got another letter. And I'm like, how stupid are they? They're not even using artificial intelligence intelligently. I mean, we need to get rid of them. We need flat tax.
if there's no intelligence in the first place, then what you end up with is artificial unintelligence. Like it just basically compounds existing problems. But one of the issues that you guys have as well, and a lot of the countries have this, is when you owe them money, you get all these penalties and you get, statutory interest, etc. But when they owe you money, you can fight for years for it. There's generally not much of a penalty applied. I do want to just say, well,
there is no penalty.
one of the things that is unique about the US system is that even if you leave, your taxes are based on citizenship. That puts me in a fairly unique position because I'm very interested in the United States, in that I can do a lot of things in your country that you would be taxed for, but I would pay nothing for. Now, again, that benefits me. I don't want you to change it because, hey, I'm the beneficiary of this.
Right.
But the reason I bring it up is because I think it's wrong. I think it's totally wrong that you and I can go and buy two identical houses next to each other and own those houses for 10 years and make $500,000 profit after 10 years. And you're going to have to give a certain amount to the US government, and I don't have to give anything to the US government. How does that make sense? And I'm surprised that when your country is so open, more open than any other country to international investors, that Americans sit there and they argue amongst themselves about who should be paying what domestically and completely ignore the international community. Because, look, I might be somewhat clever, but I'm not the cleverest person out there. There are no doubt billionaires and multi-billion-dollar multinational companies that are out there abusing the US tax code to their heart's content. And I think Americans should start to say something about it.
Why don't we? Why hasn't this been brought up?
I think David brings it up every time he goes to DC.
Because if you say something,
the other problem I have is they have full immunity. They have 100% full immunity. They can harass you. They can cheat you. And we had a gentleman that used to be an attorney, Scott Steele, with the IRS, and then he left. He was pretty high up, I think, within the IRS. And I spoke with him many times, but he said it was sickening. They could go in and intentionally just harass a man because they didn't like him. And one time he even said, you know what, we don't have anything on this man, let's go. And they said, no, this is too much fun. We're having too much fun. I mean, they're going to cause somebody to have a heart attack from the anxiety level that they're pushing him into. And they're doing it because and he said, you know, I learned then I didn't want to do this. And he turned around and now he's teaching people how to avoid them, not evade them, avoid them.
So Rick,
that's the thing we have to stop. Full immunity. They need accountability. So
Rick, to answer why they don't, why Americans don't say much more about the international stuff is the politicians won't ever bring it up. And the reason why is because international business people will say, hey, if you try to change this system, I am going to remove 2,000 jobs from your electorate. And I'm going to make donations to PACs because I can't make donations directly. And I'm going to support the other candidate. This is the sort of thing that, and it's totally, totally wrong. It doesn't just happen in America. It happens everywhere else as well. But I think it's more pronounced in the United States. I do want to very quickly come back to politics if I can. The betting markets are now showing Kamala Harris as taking the lead as the person. There is some conjecture that Biden may step down now that he has COVID, etc. I think that if Democrats want to have a reasonable chance at winning this election, which not because I have a bias or a preference, I don't think there's much chance of them winning, but anything can happen in politics. I think if they want to have a chance, they have to put this issue to bed. Either it's Biden or it's somebody else. They can't just keep having people thinking it's going to be this person, now it's going to be that person, and have that continuing to go on. Because what's happened,
I agree that it shows very irresponsibility of the Democrat organization. It shows that they're not being responsible right now. I agree.
I don't think they are. And what's happening is the Republicans and Trump are getting much, much stronger. Now, obviously, there's going to be an uptick anyway because of the RNC, but they're getting much stronger. And the Democrats are just falling apart. And I honestly think that there is a really significant risk to the Democrats that they could end up having a complete landslide against them.
Well, Trump did something very, very intelligent the other day, and I was talking to David Walker about it yesterday. I was laughing because it's been something I've been saying all along, that the Federal Reserves, when they adjust the rate, that will be who gets the vote. So if they don't do it before November, I think the Democrats have a chance, because people have short-term memory for life is good. So I think that, and I've always said that, well, Trump said something in one of his interviews, we weren't speaking to the people well enough and telling them what they really needed to hear. So we're going to start doing that. We're going to be very, and so when he got nominated, he goes, and I plan on keeping Powell in his seat after I get into office. And I go, how intelligent was that to tell Powell, if I'm in office, you get to keep your seat. So now he's gotten, I think that we won't see the interest rates lower, unfortunately, until after the elections. But
no, now they're saying 100% they'll get lowered by September.
Powell keeps saying that, and again, I believe that he will be the swing vote for whoever. If he does, we have talked about it many times that it will happen in September if he wants to push the Democratic Party as a favorable ticket. But my question is if he has that much control of when he can do it, why hasn't he done it now?
So one of the things that's worth noting is that the US dollar has been surprisingly high and surprisingly resilient after the amount of US dollars was actually pumped into the market during COVID. Now, actually, it is beginning to decline a little bit. The projections at the moment against the dollar basket is that the US dollar will decline. A lot of people in America go, oh, that's a terrible thing. But actually, when it comes to inward investment into the US, a weaker currency attracts that foreign money, but it also can drive inflation. So generally what they do is they try to force the currency to lower when you're in a recession. So is there potential for there to be some kind of recession, even if it's short term? I don't know. I'm not trying to predict that, but certainly with or without one, I think the US would benefit at this point from a lower dollar at the moment.
So a couple of things. One is Shaq's right. The betting markets now say that Kamala is twice as likely as Biden to be the Democrats' person. The problem Kamala has is the same problem that Hillary Clinton had. It's much harder for a female politician at that level to not rub people the wrong way. I mean,
right. I agree. And unfortunately,
if it was Kamala, would you like to take a guess as to who her VP would be? And I'll just say this very quickly. I actually think that the big names like Hakeem Jeffries and people like that, I don't think that they should run right now because it's damaging. Your political system is very, very brutal. I think they should save it for a time when they've got a realistic shot of winning. That's just my personal view. But who's going to pick as a VP?
Smart, they pick somebody, I don't know, like Gretchen. Well, then you have two women and that would bug people. But you pick somebody who wins you a swing state. You pick a kid.
So who would you propose that would be?
I don't know. I mean, I like Whitmer because she's Michigan. Michigan, I think, is a swing state. But then you have two women, and then like you lose the guy vote.
How would you feel about someone like Pritzker? Because Newsom can't.
I don't know Pritzker.
And I think that this will be a good conversation to start tomorrow. I mean, unfortunately, we have to end.
Who I like would be that she picks Biden, because then you get to keep. Biden moves into a less pressure-filled job. You get to keep all the people who like Biden.
Rick, I think that Biden's out.